presentation, so I'm going to take a selfie. All right, so we'll get this side over here. All right, so then I'll go with that. Seriously, it totally does match with my presentation, so I feel a little weird being so disconnected to my selection. Okay. All right. Don't necessarily need that, so we share that off. Okay. Hello, I'm Ismael Nava, and this is my research proposal that I'm going to be explaining to you today, South Texas Hispanics, New Media Technology and Organizational Application. I'm going to go ahead and start off with this first slide that says the next evolution of social media will be to make connections as deep as they are broad, right, from University of Waterloo. So, again, social media is very broad. It's everywhere. We have many applications for it, but we need to concentrate now and focus on how it affects, different areas of our lives. And so this is what this statement is getting to. Again, you can see all these connections. Could be in the universe, could be our brains, who knows. So, as an overview, I'm going to explain bits and pieces of intercultural communication and media. I will be explaining South Texas Hispanic identity and differentiate between it. The demographics here of Corpus Christi, Texas, how I integrated the Facebook application into my research proposal, and quickly go over my survey instrument, which right now is currently in progress. So, intercultural communication, how did it come about? 1940s, 1950s, American forces were spread out across the world, and so different social psychologists, anthropologists, theorists, researchers needed to understand how we were affecting different cultures, how we could connect and culturally communicate better, right, and become more mindful throughout the world. And as you can see now, this is recent day. We're located all throughout the world. The deep dark red is where American forces are the most. More pinkish, lighter red, the least. And so we got that from the weaklings.com. And so I'm going to concentrate on two models in intercultural communication. Has anybody here been to other countries before? Right? And one of the first things we do when we get off that plane is, how am I going to communicate with the locals? Right? Am I going to communicate positively or negatively with persons in these countries? Persons that come here to Corpus think the same exact thing, right? And so I'm not going to go through all of these. I'm just going to concentrate on two. If you have any questions over anything that I missed, I don't have a lot of time, a lot to explain. We can discuss those in the question and answers. So two that I concentrated on Hofstede's model was individualism and collectivism. And again, just moving on real quick, it's that individualism, how independent we are as a person or a group. Collectivism, how interdependent we are as persons or groups or organizations. Again, there's a lot more in there, but again, time issues, I have to move on. So, which brings me to the Global Leadership and Organizational Behavior Effectiveness Model, GLOBE model. And the GLOBE model was conducted by House et al. In 1991, and pretty much they just said that Hofstede's model needed to be updated, right? The world we live in today is technology, right? It was all over the place, much diversification in the business atmosphere. And again, because we're becoming more global, we needed a new model, right, to explain how we communicate with persons in different cultures. And so the two terms that I concentrated on in my research proposal from the GLOBE model was institutional collectivism and self-protection, how a leader or manager self-protects the persons in their organization. Again, if you want me to explain more of those and more in depth, I can do that in the question and answer process. Which brings me to intercultural new media studies. This is my foundation for my research proposal. I started up here and went from there. So Dr. Robert Shooter from Marquette University posed this new theory in 2012. And we will be discussing this at the National Communication Conference in Chicago later this year. And what she said that there's insubstantial data towards new media and intercultural communication, right? We have intercultural communication, we have new media, but with today they are, becoming very integrated with each other. So we need to have new theories that discuss this topic. It's a hot topic. And so he says that we need 21st century questions for cultural identity, right? And so I don't know many of you, but for myself, I can probably say right off the top, I have 5 different ethnicities running through my veins right now, right? Mexican, Spaniard, Indian, maybe parts of French, who knows, maybe many others, right? And so when persons ask me, Ismael, who are you? Like, what are you? And they're like, I'm confused. And I'm like, I'm confused too, right? and so again, we need 21st questions for cultural identity, and that is one of the main topics of intercultural communication in new media. And so one of the phrases, terms, jargon that Dr. Shooter brings up in his theory is acculturation, right? How we adapt, and change ourselves to be able to communicate better with other cultures. So me as a motorcycle rider, right, in my early 20s, I was like, I see this group of motorcycle riders out there, and I want to be a part of that group. So I go out and buy a jacket, I buy the helmet, and I'm standing in front of my mirror saying, I wish I could be on a motorcycle, right? And so eventually I went out and saved money and bought a motorcycle, and now I have acculturated myself to be able to communicate with that group and be a part of that group. I'm sure many of you here in this room have done that with other groups, right? Anybody possibly done that change yourself so you can So, Dr. Shooter said that there is a very limited data on the influence of social networking sites on acculturation. And so this is my foundation for my research question, which I will pose at the end of this presentation. And so many of us here in South Texas know South Texas, right? But those outside of this region may not. And so the way I wrote this paper was so that persons who were outside of this region could understand. And so if you go all the way west, Valle Verde County to Refugio and Aransas counties in the east, all the way down to Cameron and Hidalgo counties in the south, and everything in between, and the persons living in it. And I got this from Lone Star Fernback 2000 and A Brief Sketch of Texas History 2014. So I'm concentrating on South Texas Hispanic identity, and again, there's many ethnicities in this region, right? But I needed to concentrate and specifically address this cultural group. And so, talking about the history of those persons who have native indigenous backgrounds, Mexicans from Latin America backgrounds, Hispanics from Latin European backgrounds, Tejanos, which were Mexicans, Spaniards that mixed together and who called this region home, which would be called Texas, Tejanos. Again, there's many other ethnicities in there, but again, I needed to concentrate specifically. And so the Tejano, right? Many of you may know of this great battle between identity, maybe you do not. So for the outside reader from this region, I needed to separate and explain both. And so you have the Tejano, which can be the Hispanic Texan, or the Tejano, which could be the Mexican Texan, right? And so the Tejano Hispanic Texans historically, as a progress the last century, that in American culture, they wanted to be a part of this American culture. They wanted to be in that in-group. They wanted to separate themselves from the Mexican perspective, right? They said, no, I'm not Mexican, I'm Hispanic, I'm more American, right? When you can go to the Tejano Mexican Texans, right, saying, no, I need to bring Mexico with me to Texas, to America, right? I need to create this culture in this new land. And they want to be in that in-group. And so they wanted to distance themselves from American culture, right? They wanted to be part of that out. Renderly 2005 calls this diaspora, right? It's a longing for the foreign home. And so they, Asian cultures, I guess you could say, there's many Chinatowns, right? They wanted to bring China to America. They wanted to have that location so they can feel comfortable, right? And so this is the two differences between these ethnicities within an ethnicity. And I needed to state that in my paper. So it's kind of like a historical paper, too, if you can say it also. And so 20th century Tejanos, many Tejanos were described as wanting to be equal with Anglos, not necessarily become Anglo. They fought for their civil rights. They had their own civil rights movement in the early, late 1800s, early 1900s, all the way to World War II, where they could now, after that time period, equally say that, we're businessmen and women. We're lawyers, we're teachers, right? And so they're able to go ahead and do that with that progression. And so they wanted to accommodate and acculturate, but not assimilate. And again, if you need any explanation of those words, I can do it in the question and answer process.
And so in the industrial era of the 1950s to 1980s, Texas societal developments overall, not just South Texas, right? Texas became an imperial state. And again, I stated this in my paper, right? The oil booms and busts, ups and downs. The ups and downs of the cattle trade, cotton and cattle trade. During this time period, Texas diversified itself through electronics and technology, right? NASA in Houston, Dell Company in Austin, and others in different cities, Dallas. And so there was a high entrepreneurial diversification during these years. But what about here in South Texas, 1970s to 1990s? Slow development, slow economic trade, right? If you look down here, poverty rate in 1997, Southwest Texas, 29.3%. Parts of Southeast Texas also could be included, in South Texas. So some of that number would transfer over. But if you look at that, high poverty rates, almost 30% in this region, right, during that time period. So this has to do with business ideas, business development, right? So I stated this in my paper. We see this from Texas Comptroller of Public Accounts. And so present day, right, and so the U.S. government in the 1970s needed to group Mexican Americans, needed to group Latino Latinas, Chicano Chicanas, right, and many others in this ethnicity together. So they just called them Hispanic. And so this is what I'm referring to as Hispanic identity in South Texas. So on a 6-to-1 ratio, Hispanic Texans, government terms, prefer the term Hispanic than any other. Right? So if you ask anybody that would be called Hispanic, say, hey, are you Hispanic? 6-to-1 would be say, oh yes, I'm Hispanic. Less than a tenth of this 9.8 million population in Texas use the term Latino. A third of them or less would say, I'm Hispanic, but I'm also American, or I'm just American. Right. So if you look at this slide, dark purple means high populations of Hispanics. You have here on the East Coast, mostly Miami area, South Florida. Over there on the West Coast, right, California, San Diego, Santa Barbara, LA area, all over there, especially more towards central, south part of that state, a little bit in the Northwest, and this deep population right here in the Southwest, and here we are in Corpus Christi, Texas. Deep purple. I need you to just remember this map as I continue forward with my presentation. It becomes very important. And so I need to explain Corpus Christi demographics to the outside reader so they can understand what I'm explaining here. And so Hispanics in this city have 60% of the population, 51% are female. The median age is 35 years old, with the 55-year-olds, 32% of the population. The household income in this area is lower than the household income to the rest of the states. Which 37% of the businesses owned are Hispanic owned in this region, in the city, which recently, currently, the city has been ranked in the top 25 for economic growth and development. And you might have heard that on one or two advertisements on TV. Devore, Chattanooga, event was named in Corpus Christi 2014 to Corpus Christi 2013. And so I needed to integrate social media into my paper because it's a hot topic. We're barely understanding it. Not even a decade old, or right at a decade, maybe a year or two. And so I could have concentrated on many other social media applications, but who in here is on Facebook? Yeah, it has to do with almost 98% of this room. So, yeah. In 2013, revenue streams of Facebook, 7.8 billion. Gross income, 5.97 billion. The brand worth of Facebook in 2013, $34.3 billion. Right? FactSet Research Systems Incorporated, 2014. So, recently, this year, Facebook has come out with the Facebook for Business tool. Does anybody know about this? Okay. Who does not know about it? Maybe it's 80%. Okay, so they recently came out with that January 2014. This Facebook for Business tool is marketed to target such groups, right? To target groups that are interested in food, right? To target organizations such as Child Protective Services, for many other organizations out there, to help them increase, you can say about brand awareness, company awareness, but for other companies too that want to promote themselves, to increase drive-in store sales, including online sales, to help launch new products, right? To build company awareness, to businesses on mobile applications, right? Everybody here, who does not have a cell phone in here right now? Okay, and so I got that to get started in 2014. Right here is their main page of Facebook for Business. Again, this is to help businesses create an environment, communicate with their different cultures. And so I pertain this to the Hispanic culture and how they can communicate, become more culturally relevant. And so I integrated communication privacy management theory, CPM theory. Dr. Sandra Petronio was a part of our comm week this past week. I had dinner with her a couple of days ago. Very, very awesome lady. And so, right, relating to the Hispanic demographic, that we have a battle for privacy and communications, right? And that is related to Hispanic collectivism, right? Because, again, we are collective culture. The Hispanics are a collective culture, and that they communicate with each other interdependently, but they have a high rate of privacy concern. So I integrated this theory into my paper also. Which all of Hispanics that are online, 80% of those Hispanics use social media, Brenner and Smith, 2013. And which they say that language and cultural relevancy are very important, right, to social media applications, not just Facebook, but that's all around. And so Lopez in 2014 said that every day 23 million Hispanics use Facebook and are actively engaged. In a 30-day time period, there was a study that said Hispanics posted 338.4 million photos. 30-day time period. They posted over 1 billion comments. They uploaded over 4 million videos. They checked in over 8 million times into locations, one which I'm going to put that picture on after this is over. And so because of this, Facebook said that, oh, this is, it's one of the highest, it's going to be predicted in this century, the highest populous demographic, right? And so they opened a new location in Miami. And so when you look at that map I showed earlier, is why wouldn't they open a location here in South Texas, right? And Southwood, higher population just as much, right? But wider range. Why wouldn't they do that? Is it because? So that's one of my questions. Is it because the South Texas business environment and leadership management decision processes? Is it because we acculturate slower than the rest of the country? Mm-hmm. Hispanics in this area. Hispanics in this area different from Hispanics in California, different from Hispanics in Florida, right? Okay, so from Malcolm Gladwell's keynote speech, the future of social media, organizations need to build trust with their stakeholders through culture, through services, through products, through people, through policies, through marketing, and through pricing, right? To have a greater communicative atmosphere in environments. Got that from intersectionconsulting.com. To build trust. And so my research question, I have hypotheses in there, but again, I'm kind of still working on this. So if you want to just concentrate on the research question is, do middle-aged Hispanic business owners in South Texas effectively use the Facebook for Business function tool, right, to help their business growth strategy in the 21st century? So that was my research question. And again, I have many other hypotheses, but I can explain those later if you need to. And so, real quick, my survey methods, online quantitative survey instrument. Right now it's at 14 questions, reduced it, and for different aspects. The first half of it deals with the identity of the business owner. The second half deals with organizational decisions with new media. The participants are going to be different Hispanic organizations in Corpus, or minority-owned businesses in this city and region. And I'm going to create 2 surveys, one in English, one in Spanish, again, because language relevancy is very important, as I found in my research, which I just had in English version, but there's no need to Spanish version. Okay. So as a review, I explained bits and pieces of intercultural communication, how it started. I explained Hofstede and the Globe model. I explained intercultural new media studies and how it's a hot topic, and the new theory posed in 2012. I explained the differentiating South Texas Hispanic identity, the demographics of South Texas, of Corpus Christi, how I integrated Facebook application into my paper, and just very briefly stated my points. Thank you.